Hello, everybody. Welcome to Inside Diverse Cinema. Again, we have an amazing conversation today. I'm talking to, my goodness, an amazing screenwriter and producer. I mean, his credits are intense. His name is Saeed Crumpler, and we're going to be talking to him today about his career, his journey. And of course, guys, he's from the Bay, so you know how I feel about the Bay. So I feel like it's my homeboy I'm talking to right now. So we will dive into it and just start. So, Saeed, welcome.
Thank you for having me. And I had to rep the Bay today and every day, but especially today. I was like, let me bust out the Oakland A's hat, even though the A's aren't in Oakland anymore. But you know, it's the same feeling.
It's history, just like the Raiders too.
Yeah,
it's gonna always be repping, right?
Yeah, facts.
Wow. Well, let's talk about that for a minute because, Saeed, I don't say past tense. I say right now. You're still that musician, still that rapper, still that artist. Let's talk about that for a moment, and then segue into the screenwriting. But let's start with the roots of who you are.
Yeah, I started. Grew up, born and raised in Oakland, California. I went to Claremont Junior High, same junior high Ricky Henderson went to, Gary Payton went to, Tom Hanks, I think, went to the same school. Like most people, I love rap music, you know what I mean? And one thing about the Bay Area, Oakland specifically, is it has a huge independent Bay Area rap scene. And so first time I ever rapped was in high school, junior high school, freestyling, but then the first time I ever did a song was in high school. And ever since then I just was addicted to it. And when I went to college, funny enough, I had a screenwriting class, and my first and only black screenwriting teacher, his name was Larry Clark at San Francisco State. And I remember I had wrote a script and he was like, you got a voice. And I was like, what is a voice? And then I was in my dorm room rapping and making beats, and everybody would come over at San Francisco State and make music. We had like a little studio, and in our dorm room, me and my homeboy Sekou, and I remember my sophomore year, the counselor was like, you need to declare a major, because I hadn't declared a major yet. And I was like, all right, screenwriting, film, you know what I mean? And so I've been doing screenwriting and storytelling, but I will say once I graduated, I had that degree, didn't really mean much, but everybody in the Bay was making music, so I dove right into music. And so I actually pivoted back to screenwriting later in life.
Yeah. Wow. That's fascinating. So you were always at the core a storyteller.
Yeah.
It's just a matter of time before you circled back to it. I mean, professionally speaking, but as far as I'm concerned, when you're in college, you start professional work right then.
Yeah, you do.
Think, you're not in Hollywood, but you were always writing. That's fascinating. So
yeah, I was.
The music... Oh, I'm sorry.
No, I said I was. I agree with you.
Yeah. I think about the rhythm, and when you write, do you have that same rhythm? And I know every script is like a song, it's different. But do you find that music has shaped how you write? Or do you even think about that when you're writing?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because I feel like one of the hardest things to get is, I was listening to somebody talk, and they're like, the two hardest things are like getting the dialogue and having like a voice. And I feel like, because they're like, structure and stuff like that can be taught, but being able to write dialogue is almost a form of poetry in a sense. So for me, dialogue was something that came rather easy, because I was around a lot of people, and being a musician, you have to be like a sponge, and I'm always listening, and rapping, which is, creating dialogue. You got 3 minutes, 2 minutes to get your point across as clear as possible, as catchy as possible, and it has to make sense from, point A to point B. And so when it came time to write scripts, I found comfort in dialogue. And I think later on, I was like, okay, everybody was, would say your dialogue is so realistic. And I think that just comes from understanding poetry, but also understanding people and being around. One thing about the Bay Area, as you know, it's like a melting pot of cultures and individuals. So you're going to hear all different kinds of slang patterns, vocal styles. And I just put that, I think I practiced it in music and then put it in the screenwriting. And so structure and like act breaks and all that kind of stuff I learned later.
And as you're talking, I don't know a lot about how you grew up, but I'm also thinking to myself that you were around the aunties and the uncles and the grandmas and the grandmas.
Yeah, for sure.
Long before. Yeah.
Yeah, my dad is an artist and a painter, and so I've always been around. As a kid, he would take me to his murals. He was painting different murals in San Francisco and Oakland. He painted a mural at Castlemont High, and he painted one in Fillmore. So as a kid, I'm with him, while he's on these adventures in these different areas in San Francisco and Oakland and Berkeley and Vallejo and painting murals. And so I'm seeing firsthand art and creation, even at a young age, like 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So yeah, I've always been around art, and my dad always loved music, and my mom also. So my mom liked television a lot, so I think breaking into television, I kind of owe my mom, because my mom would sit and watch all the television shows. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like,
oh my goodness, my mother too. Everything. I grew
her
up
soaps and everything. Yeah, my grandmother had the soaps. Yeah.
Oh
so,
my goodness, she would not let me watch those, but yeah, she was into her soap.
Yeah. So I feel like my grandmother, my aunties, and my mom kind of were my entryway into television per se.
Wow, that's so fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
So now we pivot to Hollywood. And now one of the things I find, it seems like when I listen to your work and see you, that you have this incredible foundation even before you came to quote unquote LA. So, but let's talk about that, the pivot, if you will, to how do you maintain your authentic self in LA and in the writing, where people want to sometimes change. Now, we're not talking about rewriting. We know that's part of the process.
Yeah.
But your voice, going back to what you said earlier about voice, how do you maintain that authenticity as a writer?
I think that's a good question. I think my number one thing is I always try to create what I want to see. And so that's how I approached it when I was breaking in. I would write what I wanted to see. And now, even when I choose projects, I say no to a lot, but the ones I do choose, I feel like it's something I want to see and also something I could execute. And I think at the end of the day, you have to realize what type of stories you want to tell and, stick to it. There are a lot of people who, and I know people who get into Hollywood and or when they get a chance to break in, they try to do everything per se, or they're willing to do everything. And for me, I feel like I'm comfortable in knowing what I want to do, what kind of stories I want to tell. And so that keeps me as my North Star. It's like, would I watch this show? When I wasn't writing scripts, would I watch this show? And that keeps me on my North Star. But some people do break in and they try to make what they think people want to watch or what they think Hollywood wants. The only problem with that is that changes so often and so fast that by the time you try to create something that you think they want, they're on to the next thing. So my advice is like, figure out what you want to watch, what you want to make, and make that, also understanding that it's a business and it is Hollywood. So you don't want to necessarily make something that one person will want to watch. But I do feel like within making something authentic and it'll relate to the world. The more specific you can make it and draw on your life experience, then the more to be embraced by more people, the way I feel.
Mm-hmm. So deep. It's so deep. And that leads me into this question. So you are a professional writer, we know, and congratulations. Not a lot of writers are trying to get there and get that overall deal, and you did that.
Yeah.
You did that. Okay.
Yeah.
And I know that's a whole different lane, a whole different animal, a whole different mountain. So let's talk about that for a moment. And, one of the things we love to do here is we know that there's a range of people who listen to the show. And it's also a space for inspiration, but also reality. And so I want to talk about that for a moment, about what changed for you once that happened, because now the expectations are very different now, and you're at a different level, and that's real. And let's talk about how that changed for you creatively in terms of your writing.
Well, I think one thing that did change is, overall, when you get an overall deal or a first look deal, at first I had a overall deal, then I got a first look deal, and basically what you're signed by the company to develop television shows. And so one thing that changed was, you break into the game writing as much as possible. You're writing, especially for TV, you're writing pilots, you're writing spec scripts of like Atlanta, Insecure, like you're writing scripts all the time, trying to get better. One thing that changed for me was once you get a development deal, they don't necessarily want you to write the script. They want you to develop a show and make kind of what is a pitch and a sales document, so that then you can go to Netflix, Amazon, Hulu, Apple, all those type of places, pitch your show idea, and then they say yes or no. So one thing that did change was like figuring out how to write a one-pager, and like what is a one-pager, and then like how do you write a pitch, and what are the different things in a pitch, and okay, I gotta get a visual deck, and then I would make a blueprint of the visual deck and hand it to a graphic artist, and then okay, how do you pitch, and then figuring out what your pitch style is, and taking notes on how you pitch and how you deliver. The good thing for me was I came from music, so pitching is all about performance, not really about writing, which is the ironic thing. Like it's some people that can pitch really well and can't write. You know what I mean? And there's some people that write really well but can't pitch. So coming from music, I'm used to performing and not afraid to like talk in front of people, because like I always tell people it's nothing worse than like going to perform at a bar somewhere where people are not there to see you and don't want to see you, and they might be drunk, like, what I'm saying? So it's like, if you can do that, you know what I mean, and climb off stage, then pitching and everything is all right. But I think that's the difference. The difference for me, it wasn't so much the writing, it was just realizing, okay, what I'm going to write is more like prose, instead of being in final draft, actually writing a script. I'm actually writing like bios about this character and this story, and what this character is and what that character is and what are the conflicts, like a real book almost.
Yeah. And that makes total sense, because you know, when you're running the show, that's what it is. And you're going to be the one that everybody goes to, and you have to know the whole world. I always say when you're a director, because that's what basically a showrunner is, you have 100 jobs. Some people have
Right.
20, you always have 100.
And you have to know everything.
You know
You know? Like, you have to know you, and that's another thing is like sometimes, you know, when you're writing a pilot, you know, you're not necessarily thinking, you're thinking about what is going to happen the first episode and how can I set some little things up for the future, but you don't know, like, okay, what happens at the end of season 1, what could season 2 look like, what season 3 looks like these are all things you have to know when you're developing a show. So you're right, you got to know it all.
And pivot too, because there's more notes upon the notes, right?
And it's going to change. It's going to change all the time, because once you get a writer's room, then new ideas come. So, you know, developing a show and pitching a show is very interesting, but it's, you know, you got to have your salesman hat on, and a lot of what you pitch is going to end up changing when you make the show, if they buy it, you know?
Absolutely, absolutely. And so you mentioned the writer's room. Oh my goodness. So the writer's room. So when you are in the writer's room, and every room is different, we know, right? What's your, as you say the North Star, what is the thing that grounds you in the different rooms that you're in? What do you bring?
That's a good point, because I've been in 4 rooms. 1 was animated, 2 were dramas, and 1 was a comedy. And so I'll say in the comedy room, well, in all rooms, I think the number one thing is that like kind of calms me no matter what room I'm in is 1, life experience. So I feel like I've lived about 5 different lives in 5 different, you know, like areas. And what kind of grounds me is the idea, like, okay, no matter what, I'm going to be able to pitch something somewhere about something I've been through in my life, or somebody I know went through something in their life. So my life experience is something that I lean on. I usually pitch from like, hey, I know somebody who did this, or hey, let me tell you about this time this happened to me. Very from a personal standpoint. I don't just say like, oh, this will be cool if the character did this. Like, nah, I'll be like, I know somebody that this happened to, and this is what happened. So I try to always go from like a personal aspect. I think giving your life stories in the room is key. Doing research is key also. And, you know, depending on what type of room you're in a comedy room, you want to be open to being all right with saying a joke that might not be funny. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, and I remember when I was on Flatbush, I had a joke where I was like, man, I don't know if I could say this. And I was like, I don't know if this is gonna fly, and it ended up flying, and ended up being, you know, one of the biggest things in season 2. Like, and so I was like, damn, okay, so you know, being okay with like, there is no bad answer, there is no bad pitch. A bad pitch is like not paying attention in the room, pitching something that somebody else said, or just really just not paying attention. So yeah, that's kind of my superpowers when it comes to being in a room, and it just being like fun to be around. You know what I mean? Like, one thing about being in a room is like, it's fun to be around all these people that have great minds and ideas. You know, I was just in a mini room for one of my mentors' projects, and it was just dope being around, like, I hadn't been in a room for like a year and a half, and because I've been developing, but it was just dope just to be around 6 or 7 other people and laugh at break, and just like, damn, they got good ideas. It just reminds you how much of a community effort it is to create these television shows and these ideas, which reminds me a lot about music, you know, because you're working with a producer. You might get a singer on a hook, you might get a rapper on another verse, you might get a poet at the beginning, you might get a jazz saxophonist to come do a solo, like just collaboration. And I think a lot of television is collaboration.
Yeah. And let's talk about Flatbush for a minute. I mean, just the title alone, you know. I was like, wait, when you say misdemeanor,
yeah,
those things, you're like, uh-oh.
yeah, nah. It was. It was.
I'm so excited about this show. Yeah. No,
it was definitely a great show. What happened is I was in a Nickelodeon writing program, and they're owned by Paramount, and Paramount also owns Showtime. So I remember I was in Nickelodeon, and the woman who was running the program, Kate, she was like, hey, there's this television show, I don't know if you heard of it, it's called Flatbush Misdemeanors on Showtime. And what's funny is me and my homies had just started watching season 1 of the show, and so we were like laughing about the show, and I was like, hell yeah, I'm watching this show. So she was like, all right. So I sent my script, and I ended up meeting with the showrunner and the 2 creators, Kevin and Dan, and we just like hit it off. And the interesting thing is, in season 2, Kevin, one of the main characters, he was in an art fellowship. So at the time, I was in the Nickelodeon fellowship, so I was inputting a lot of my experience being in the Nickelodeon program with his experience, so it just automatically worked. But yeah, it's funny because it's a show that like only lasted 2 seasons, but a lot of people watch, like Quinta Brunson, who created Abbott. I remember she was on LeBron James' show, and she said that Flatbush was one of her favorite shows that she was watching. And I run into people all the time, from like writers to, you know, just fans of TV to executives who, when I say, yeah, I wrote on Flatbush, they're like, oh shit, you wrote on Flatbush? Like, it's definitely a show that I feel like is gonna go down as like one of those shows that really was right on point with culture, like almost to the point. Every time I run into people, they're like, how did y'all get away with the shit y'all was doing? It's kind of like Boondocks, where like Boondocks definitely have more seasons, but like Boondocks is one of those shows where it's like people still talk about those episodes, and I feel like Flatbush is one of those shows and where it's like, how did y'all get away with that? Like, y'all are so on point culturally, and yeah, it was an amazing show. The only thing that hurts is that it was just 1 season for me, but it was two in the whole show.
Yes. And those experiences shape us, really.
Yeah.
And, you know, writing that comedy muscle is very different, and it's wild, and it's insane, and yet it's actually really honest.
Yeah.
I always say comedy is drama that you can now laugh at.
Yep.
Because at the time stuff's happening, it's not funny.
Nah, you're right. I think there's a thin line between like laughing and crying, or crying and laughing, like, you know. And I think the best, it's funny because a lot of comedians become really good horror writers. Like, that's the funny thing. Like, you look at Jordan Peele, you know, it was like a thriller comedy. You know, he was from comedy, sketch, and then even if you look at Zach Kreger, who created Weapons and some other shows, like, he was a comedy writer too. And now he's like one of the biggest horror writers, feature writers in the game. And so I think it is something, it is a thin line. And I will say one thing that's dope about, I love comedians. So like half of that room was like comedians and the other half was like comedy writers. And I think one thing I learned from that show was like, any comedy show that I show run is going to be built the same, where it's like, gotta have stand-ups in the room.
That's so true. That's so true. I never thought of that, because it's all about timing.
Come on.
And you can write the comedy, but how do you?
Yeah.
In real time.
Yeah. And
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. No, go ahead. Go ahead. No. Nah.
Did you find that, like, even on set, when you go from the page to the set, did you find that the actors really stayed with the script, or was it still that kind of, comedic timing thing, and we're just going to go with it because we know the script so well? Did you find that too?
Yeah, they I mean, to me, that's one dope thing about having, because half the cast, what I was going to say was like half the cast was like comedians too, like stand up. And so you talk about timing. I think when you mix, especially for comedy TV shows, the perfect mix is like having actors with stand ups, because they have the timing and they can go back and forth. And I think, there are times, I mean, like you would, like there are, you do have the script, and like, I guess 80 to 90% of it is how it is, but there are times where they're improvising, or it's funny because you might write something and it's once it hits screen, it's like funnier than you even wrote it because of the way they said it, or the way another character responds, you know what I mean? Or somebody will show up like and you're like, whoa, like, god damn, like she killed that, like, so it's like, it's definitely, and those are the good joyous things of it. I think it's the same thing even for drama, where Denzel shows up in Glory and he changes that whole scene, like, you know what I'm saying? So it's like the way it was written is not the way it got filmed, like, you know what I'm saying? So I think it works both ways.
Man, wow. And that leads me to, there's so much to talk about. I could talk all day.
Yeah, please.
This whole thing called the journey.
Mm-hmm.
And working at Flatbush, there's certain intricacies and things that people don't see to make them magic.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you talk about your journey, what are the things that people are not seeing that you're that you're crafting and that you're making? And there's so much about that. And I know maybe I don't want to get too deep into your process. I don't want to lift the veil too much. I know some of that's real private here for us as writers. But I would like to know, what's the stuff that you want people to appreciate about what you do to get to the magic of shows like Flatbush?
Yeah, I think, there's a few things. Great question. First thing I'm thinking is like, the journey ain't gonna be what you thought it was, and that's for the good and for the bad, in a sense, like, because I never thought when I got in that I would like end up signing to Sony and all, like, you know what I mean? But you also have to be almost like a gypsy almost. Like, you got to go from job to job, gig to gig, project to project. You got to be on the hustle. And if you're not ready for gypsy life, like any minute, like literally when I got hired on Flatbush, it was like I got a call on a Friday. They were like, all right, you start Monday. It's like, oh shit. Like, you know what I'm saying? So it's like, it ain't, it's not like a regular job per se. So that has good parts and negative parts. You got to be ready to get up. Another thing that I'll say is like, the thing people don't see is the hard work, the discipline. I mean, I think one thing that's good for me is coming from, I played a lot of sports when I was younger. So discipline, especially I played baseball, which is probably one of the hardest sports to play because you deal with a lot of failure. Because a great baseball player, he could fail 70% of the time and be great. Like, because if he hits the ball 30% of the time, he's a Hall of Famer. And so you got to be able to deal with a lot of failure. I failed a lot, still fail. And you have to be all right with it. And I think coming from music, that helped me too, because you go through a whole period where you're not that good. You need to get your 10,000 hours. And then even then, you still failing and going back and forth. And I remember when I'll never forget, I had entered grad school, and I got rejected by NYU, USC, LMU, and UCLA. And I remember I was with my homies, because we were meeting up once a month, my homie Tone and Silence. We had like a men's group that we'll meet up and just talk about our goals and stuff every month. And I remember I had to tell them, I was like, bro, I didn't get into none. But it still worked out for me, because I ended up UCLA actually reached out and they were like, hey, we like your writing. You know, we got a online program that you could take a TV writing class at night. And so I took it. I followed my gut. So you gotta, if I would have just been like, all right, I didn't get into grad school, that's it. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, and so even now, like, you know, even when I entered a whole bunch of contests, I entered a whole bunch of fellowships. I didn't get in. Even before I got into Nickelodeon, I had made it to the finals of Warner Brothers, all the way through the interviews, and then I didn't make it. And then 2 months later, I got into Nickelodeon. I'm like, look at it. You know what I mean? So and then my first job interview for a show, I didn't get that show. And I was like, damn. And then later I got Flatbush. So what I'm saying is like, you got to get comfortable with failure. And it's very hard to do. And I'm not saying it's easy. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I'm not sitting up here being like, it's okay. Like, like, it's okay to, like, open the ice cream, have a seat, watch, you know what I'm saying? Watch a show and like sit in it for a few days. But then you got to get back up and go at it. And I think playing sports, doing music, create, and coming from the Bay, I think from the Bay, we don't give up, you know what I'm saying? And so I would say you got to be tough skinned because you're going to hear a lot of no's, you know what I'm saying? Ryan Coogler talks about that, you know what I'm saying? Like, Ryan Coogler wanted to make Creed, and at first Sylvester Stallone said no. And then he was like, all right, cool. He didn't give up on it. You know what I'm saying? He could have been like, oh, all right, well, shit, I ain't never gonna ask again to make Creed. He went and made Fruitville, came back, showed Sylvester Stallone. He was like, oh, shit, well, yeah, you're a dope filmmaker. Let's do it. So, you gotta, I always say, like, if you get a no, you're on your way to a yes. If you got your head down working hard,
That's amazing. It's so true. I feel you on the grad school. I do. I applied to NYU, Yale. We always got to go big.
Gotta go big or go home. I ain't mad at it.
I did all of it. Juilliard, almost Juilliard.
Okay, see?
But almost doesn't count, right? But still, my frame. I still have my frame. Rejection. Are you kidding me?
I still got mine. I still got my NYU, UCLA rejection. I still got mine.
But it's so true when you're right on the edge.
Mm-hmm.
And look at you.
Yep.
Look at you.
Man, you gotta keep going, and it still happens. You know what I'm saying? Like, sometimes you'll have an idea, you'll pitch it. They don't see the vision. Sometimes you're too early. Sometimes it doesn't fit them. But you just got to keep going. And another thing I do is, like, I'm always writing. I'm very disciplined. I'm working on 2 things right now, and you just got to continue to create. I might write a book. Like, there's all kind of things. Like, you just got to, we're storytellers. So you got to figure out ways to storytell.
Oh my goodness. Oh, that leads to the next question. Oh,
Let's
my goodness.
go. I love it.
Oh, wow. Storytelling. So you've done this amazing thing called working on someone else's show and creating your own.
Mm-hmm.
And how do you balance that? Because some people have a difficult time doing that. They have a difficult time working on someone else's work. So how did working on your own creation, your own original work, inform how you approach other people's work? Because I don't think a lot of people understand that most of the work writers do, it's not our own. But well, 90% of it is not even our own stuff. We get an opportunity. We're writing at night, but we really don't have time to work. I'm laughing because you're like, I feel your brain.
Nah, I'm like, preach. Nah, I actually think this is what I think. I think it actually. So here's the thing: when you write television, this is the reason why I think if anybody's listening who wants to break into television, the first thing you should do is write an episode of your favorite show. Because that's what they had me do in the UCLA program. I wrote an episode of Atlanta, and then after that, you learn how to write. You know, the characters are already there. You don't have to worry about coming out characters. And that's really going to be what you're going to do in the room. Like, when you get in the room, like when I got in Flatbush, I'm not making up characters. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, the characters are there. I need to know the voice of the characters. I got to study the characters. These are their creations. I'm just coming to play with the toys. You know what I'm saying? And I have to know how this toy moves. And this toy moves different than that one. And so you're right. Most of TV writing is writing for somebody else's show and somebody else's vision and somebody else's voice. That's the reason why doing a spec script of another show, Atlanta, I had to get the voice of the characters. I had to get the voice of Earn. I had to get the voice of Paperboy. And so that's my advice. So if you're writing TV, 95% of the time, you're going to be writing somebody else's characters and imitating somebody's voice. For me, I like going back and forth because it's funny because I hadn't been in a room for a year and a half, and I had been developing shows for like 3 years. And when I got in my mentor's mini room, it just felt good to not have to come up with no characters. I was like, oh shit, the toys is already there. Like I don't have to make up toys. Like, oh man, I could just come up with scenarios and oh man. And I think what that made me realize is like, I think doing both is for me is the way to go. Like I love being in the room. I love like helping other people and stuff. Like even when my friends are writing pilots, like we'll like brainstorm stuff, or like they'll send me their script and I'll read it and give them notes, and I'll send them mine and they'll give me notes. But like, yeah, I think for me it takes the pressure off of creating your own thing all the time, you know, because you could get stuck and you're like, damn, man. But you know, if you're working in a room, you could be like, all right, let me work with somebody else's toys, and maybe even helping them work on their show help unlock something for your show. So I like doing both.
That's amazing. And you pay it forward too, because when you do have your show, guess what?
Listen,
they're gonna be right there in the trenches with you.
And that's the one thing about TV that I realize is like, work begets work. And a lot of the times in television, people, you know, it's good and bad, but people want to work with people they know and people who they've worked with before. And so, yeah, like you're right. Like there's people that I work with on shows that I'm like, oh, I definitely need them in my room. Like, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. So what type of stories are pulling on you right now? What are the type of stories that are really like has your heart right now? Whether it's something you're creating or something you'd like to see?
I just saw Is God Is. And so one thing I'm impressed by, I think her name is Aisha. Is it Alicia or Aisha? Can't remember. But one thing I'm impressed by her movie is she came from, I'm always impressed by people's origin story. Like she comes from a playwright background like August Wilson, which is like probably one of my favorite storytellers, screenwriters, playwrights. And I just love what he did. Like he was just like, look, and we talked about purpose, right? So August Wilson is like, look, My purpose is to document the Black experience. I'm gonna do it decade by decade, and I'm gonna put my life towards it. Because one thing I do realize is if we don't create it, we don't exist, and if we don't document it, we don't exist. So it's almost like that's what we gotta do. But yeah, I'm impressed by her because she started as a playwright, and talking about not giving up. Once I saw the movie, great directing, intense POV, crazy wild story I haven't seen before. Yeah. Great actresses, great actor. Sterling K. Brown is playing a villain. We never seen him. It just looked good, and I looked her up and I was like, okay, she can't play right, and she did the play I think 8 years ago or 10 years ago. And speaking of not giving up on that project, now 8 years later, she got a movie, and now I think she, much like Nia DaCosta, is going to be mentioned as like the Black women directors who are coming up. So I'm inspired by that. I was watching a W.E.B. Du Bois PBS special, just looking at that, I was inspired by that. I feel like we have, as like Black people, I feel like we have so many stories. And you speaking as a storyteller, we have so many stories that have not yet been told. And I think one of the problems we have is there's not enough of our stories being told, so we expect every story to represent all of us. And unfortunately, white creators don't have that problem, because they have so many stories. So when they have, when Tom Hanks is in a movie, he doesn't have to represent all white men. And so I feel like I'm excited for more Black directors, writers, actors, and actresses, because I realize, like, when I go on set on a TV show that's created by a person of color, it's reflected all the way through, from the catering to the grips to the directors to the actors and actresses. They wouldn't have jobs, assistants, script writer, you know what I mean? And so when you walk around and see all these people that have jobs, it's like, if we don't create these stories, then these actors don't have vehicles to work and showcase their talent, and the creators and these jobs, so I'm excited by that. And I'm just excited that I'm starting to see more stories, like, other than just the same hood tale, which I love those, like Boys in the Hood, Straight Outta Compton, those Menace Society, those are all movies I grew up on. But that's only like one small part of the story. So I'm happy that I'm starting to see more stories being told.
I love that. Is there anything that you can talk about that you're working on now that you're excited about?
Yeah, I wrote a pilot called the Last Romantic in LA. That's about a guy who works at a dating app by day, and at night he goes on horrible dates. It's kind of it's talking about what it's like to date now in this dating app economy and the craziness. And I felt like we haven't seen this from like a Black male perspective.
Oh my goodness. When is that movie coming out?
Man, listen. I'm trying. You know what I'm saying? The script is doing great. But I think what I'm going to end up doing, one thing I learned just working in development is like, and I think this is one thing that we as people of color creators, we got to get used to too, is like making more than one version of our story. So, like, okay, I got the TV pilot of that. I might shoot a scene, I might shoot a short, release that, and I'm thinking about writing a book, and do it that way, or maybe a play, You know what I'm saying? And or maybe all four. You know what I'm saying? And so just more ways to get the story out, because you never know what'll be the one that'll get the green light so you can get it to move. And so
true.
Yeah, so that's something. And then I'm just writing all the time. I'm gonna write some short stories, and I got a Substack I just started called Writers Write, where I'm gonna start sharing. I got a few articles up, but I'm gonna start writing on there more often and freely, just sharing more of my experience and thoughts on the industry and advice and stuff like that. Because I've written, like, I wrote a article called How to Get a Query Letter. I wrote that probably like about 6 years ago, but it had like went viral, and I love all the time. It's like how to get a manager. And I love when all the people would DM me and be like, hey, I got a manager from your letter. Like, you know what I'm saying?
That's awesome.
It just recently happened, like a couple weeks ago. A writer named JD, he hit me. He was like, because I saw he had signed with a manager, I was like, man, good job. He was like, man, your article helped me. And I was like, damn, that's what's up. You know what I'm saying? So I'm gonna do more writing on my Substack, and just, you know, giving advice and trying to help where I can.
That's beautiful. Wow. I cannot believe how the time has flown.
I know. Great job. I love it. This is a great interview.
Oh my God. But I'm not done. I got
Oh, yeah. No, go ahead.
I don't want to keep you all night because, my goodness. Oh, my goodness. It's flying. Oh, my goodness. This is a perfect segue. Wow. Again, what is everything that you've experienced so far? Because you're just getting started.
Yep.
Really.
Mm-hmm.
What's the journey for people? Because there's a lot of people who still, like, you know, we know the pandemic changed the dynamic of, move to LA, you know, but LA you still, in many ways, you have to be here. Still a lot of networking, still a lot of people here, studios, all of that. But particularly for people who are from different cities, not here. Yes, things have changed a bit. You could do a lot more Zooming. You don't necessarily have to live here to be successful or to meet people.
I agree.
However, what would you say to people who are into these, like Oakland, the Bay, or in Sacramento, or in, you know, certain smaller towns in Iowa? Like, what would you tell them? How do they change the trajectory of their screenwriting life?
I would say my advice would be, you don't need 5 scripts. You just need one really fucking good one. And I would say, because even when I broke in, I only had 2 scripts, but I had worked on those for like a whole year. So instead of, like, you know, that there's some people who write, like, you know, instead of working on one the whole year and getting it super bulletproof and getting feedback and all that type of stuff for a whole year, they'd write it, be cool with it, and then write 2 or 3 more. Like, I would say you really just need one really good script. Focus on that. Something preferably that connects to your life experience, something you went through, something you saw, something you're close to, because that gives it like authenticity and a distinct POV. And then I would say, once you got that, I would enter contests, be very strategic about it, because some cost, but look, it don't cost that much. Like, when I was rapping, that studio cost $30 an hour on the low end. So if you can't pay for a $50 contest, you know, then, you know, or a $25 enter early. Like, that's what I used to do. I used to do the early bird, where it was like $25, I'm gonna enter. So I would say be strategic, do your research on the ones, you know what I'm saying? But I would enter a few of those, see how it goes. If you don't place at first, don't get discouraged, keep working. then enter that same script in some other ones. And once you start placing, because that's what happened with me, was like, I remember the first one I placed in was like some chicken circuit one. I was so happy. Like, I screenshot it, put it, but it was all I needed to keep me going. I kept working on the script, and then I started placing in more and bigger ones, and I was like, oh, okay. I wouldn't win, because you don't have to win, you know what I'm saying? But it was like, okay, this script is reacting for me. And then I would say, if you want to break into television, I would enter fellowships. If you want to break into features, I would say enter contests and shoot a short movie. You know what I mean? And I would, if you don't live in LA, I would try to come to LA once a year. Even if you flying in for, you know, a mixer event or something, like, and then fly out, like, try to find when they have like events, like they'll have like Variety. I have an event. I just was at a Variety event, or Writers Guild to have an event, or like try to go there so you can meet more writers. Yeah, because in actuality, you're gonna need to live in LA when the room starts, but you don't necessarily, like, I know people who don't live in LA per se, but they fly in for meetings. And for TV, they're, like I said, here's the gypsy part. Like, if you get hired and they're like, you start in a week, you got to move in a week, you know, because that room is going to be for 4 to 6 months. And so you just got to be ready for that. But yeah, you don't necessarily, especially for features, you don't necessarily need to live here for features. And then another thing I would say is, like, plays. Think about doing plays. Write the book first. Like, a lot of television shows now are coming from books, you know, like, so, you know, I would say do that. I think be willing to create in a whole bunch of different spaces, but just make sure you have that script still ready to go.
Yeah, that's great. Great advice. One last question, I think.
For sure. Whatever. Let's go.
Wow. What do you, and then maybe it's a question that you're answering for yourself. But what is it that you want writers to remember as they journey? What's the North Star? What's the thing they hold on to? What's the relic? What's the amulet? Whatever it is, what is the thing that they hold on to as they go through this? Because we know it's challenging at times. The rejection is brutal. You know,
man.
The loneliness is brutal.
Man, that part. I would say go on walks. Try to go on 1 or 2 walks a day. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. No, I think 2 things. I would say create what you want to see, and the second thing, enjoy the process. That's one thing that I constantly remind myself is, like, and control what you can control, right? Which we talked about earlier, where it's like, you know, at the end of the day, fall in love with the process of developing the show, writing the script, rewriting the script, hanging out with the characters, being in the, enjoy all of that. Because, yeah, you can't control, you know, like, you can only control what you can control, which is showing up, doing the best you can do. You know what I'm saying? I couldn't control whether or not that Showtime show got another season. You know, I can't control if somebody wants to buy a television show. But what I can control is, like, creating the best show I can and having an exciting pitch, and that, like, leaving it all on the floor. So to me, I would say the North Star is, like, create what you want to watch, and fall in love with the process, and at the end of the day, only worry about what you can control, really.
Beautiful advice. Thank you for that.
For sure. I needed to hear that myself today. I'm speaking to myself at the same time. It's a data. It's a day-to-day process. You know what I'm saying? Like and some days you're gonna win. Some days you're gonna lose. But like, just every day's a new day. So, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Well, this is amazing advice coming from someone who has incredible success and
Thank you.
Starting. I cannot wait to see where you are next year, the year after that.
Come on.
I want you to come back when we get in studio.
You said no. I'll be there. I will be there. That's a promise. Let's do it next time in studio.
In studio, yes. My goodness, Saeed, thank you. Thank you for sharing your story, your heart, your journey, all of that.
Thank you for having me on. I appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, thank you all again for coming and joining us on Inside Diverse Cinema. As you can see, another amazing conversation. And I'll be putting the links to all of Saeed's, Instagram and your Substack. Even we'll share the Substack, all of that. So
Thank you.
Guys can follow him and see what he's up to. Amazing stuff coming down the pipeline. We'll talk to you guys soon.